All right, let's talk about something that so many of us struggle with, that feeling of just staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. I'm talking about insomnia. And, it's so much more than just a bad night's sleep. It's a really complex condition, and today, we're going to dive deep and really unpack the science behind it. Okay, does this sound familiar to you? You spend your entire day just dragging, you're exhausted, all you can think about is your bed, and then the second your head hits the pillow, bam, your brain just kicks into high gear. It's like a switch flips. That whole paradox of being tired but wired, that is the absolute classic signature of insomnia. And we're going to get into exactly why that happens.
And look, if that's you, I want you to know you are so far from alone. Check this out. Up to 40% of adults say they've had symptoms of insomnia. And for about 10 to 15% of people, it's a full-blown chronic disorder. I mean, that's a huge number. It's an incredibly common struggle, and it does tend to affect more women than men, and it gets a little more common as we get older.
All right, so let's get into it. What's the difference between just having a few rough nights and having an actual clinical disorder? We need to get a really clear definition here, because, understanding the problem is always the first step to actually solving it.
So here's the official definition. Insomnia disorder is all about having persistent trouble sleeping, but here's the key. It also has to cause significant daytime impairment. And honestly, that second part is everything. It's not just about the night. It's about the next day, the fatigue, that brain fog, feeling irritable. That's what turns it from just an annoyance into a real clinical issue. So how do doctors actually diagnose this? Well, they often use something called the 3-3 rule. It's pretty straightforward. The sleep problems have to be happening at least 3 nights a week, and they have to stick around for at least 3 months. This is how you can tell the difference between just a temporary rough patch and a chronic, long-term pattern that really needs to be addressed. And this really shows how a temporary problem can, become a permanent resident in your life. Think of acute insomnia like a short-term visitor. It shows up because of jet lag or maybe a really stressful week at work. But chronic insomnia? That's when that visitor unpacks their bags, moves in, and just refuses to leave, even long after whatever triggered it is gone. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty science. What is actually going on inside your brain and your body that creates that crazy tired but wired feeling? What's keeping that on switch flipped, even when you're just desperate to fall asleep?
So when things are working right, your sleep is run by these two really cool natural systems. The first one is your sleep drive. The best way to think about it is like hunger. The longer you're awake, the hungrier for sleep you get. The pressure just builds and builds. And then you've got your circadian rhythm. That's your internal 24-hour body clock that basically tells you, okay, time to be alert, or all right, time to wind down. And in a perfect world, these two things work together in perfect harmony.
But with insomnia, something comes along and just overrides both of them. And that something has a name: hyperarousal. This is the central idea we need to understand. It basically means your brain and your entire nervous system are stuck in on mode, a state of high alert. It's like they're just shouting down your sleep drive and completely ignoring your body clock.
And this is what that hyperarousal actually looks like in your body. This is the why behind tired but wired. Your brain literally stays too active. Stress hormones, like cortisol, are pumping when they should be low. Your heart rate is higher than it should be. Your body is physically stuck in go mode, not rest mode. Okay, so we get what it is, but how does it even start? And more importantly, why does it stick around for so long? This is where we get into the really tricky part, the vicious cycle of insomnia. There's this great model that explains it perfectly. It's called the 3 Ps model. Think of it as a journey. First, you have the predisposing factors. This is stuff you're kind of born with. Maybe you're just a naturally anxious person or a light sleeper. Then something happens, the precipitating event. This is the trigger, like a major illness or a really stressful job change. But honestly, the most important part, the real engine that keeps this whole thing going, is the 3rd P, perpetuating factors. These are all the things we do to try and cope with the bad sleep that actually end up making it so much worse. And this simple, powerful idea right here, this is one of the biggest perpetuating factors there is. Your brain, through conditioning, learns this new, totally unhelpful equation. Bed equals being awake. So your bedroom, which should be the sanctuary for rest, actually becomes a place that triggers anxiety and frustration the moment you walk in. Okay, and this is a super important distinction to make. You hear all the time, oh, you just need better sleep hygiene. Don't drink coffee late, turn off screens. And yeah, that's good advice for anyone. But that's not the root of chronic insomnia. Conditioned insomnia is a deeply learned psychological response.
The problem isn't the cup of coffee you had at 4 p.m. The problem is that your brain has learned that your bed is the place to start worrying and being wide awake.
And listen, this isn't just about feeling a little tired the next day. The stakes are actually really high. Chronic insomnia creates this massive ripple effect on your health. We're talking a significantly increased risk for a whole host of problems, both mental and physical. Things like anxiety and depression, sure, but also hypertension, cardiovascular disease, even diabetes. This is exactly why finding an effective treatment is so important.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the problem. Let's switch gears. The really good news here is that insomnia is very treatable. So let's talk about how to get out of this trap. And the path out is paved with some really solid evidence-based science.
First things first, let's talk about getting a diagnosis. A lot of people think you have to go get wired up for a fancy overnight sleep study, but for most cases of insomnia, that's actually not needed. The diagnosis is clinical, which is just a way of saying it's based on a really thorough conversation with a doctor or therapist about your sleep patterns, your history, and how you're feeling during the day.
And when it comes to actually treating this, there is a clear heavyweight champion. It's called Cognitive Behavioral Therapy for Insomnia, or CBTI for short. And this isn't just my opinion. It is recommended by pretty much every major medical organization as the #1 gold standard treatment. And the reason is simple. It works. It delivers strong, long-lasting results because it gets to the root causes of the problem, instead of just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms.
So what is CBTI? Well, it's a program with a few core components that all work together to basically dismantle your insomnia. First, you have stimulus control. That's all about breaking that bed equals awake connection we talked about. Then there's sleep restriction. Now this one sounds totally backward, I know, but you actually limit your time in bed to only the hours you're truly sleeping. This builds up a super strong sleep drive. And finally, there's cognitive restructuring, which is all about learning to challenge and change all those anxious, unhelpful thoughts about sleep that keep your brain buzzing at night.
This chart really lays out the difference perfectly. Look, medications can definitely be helpful sometimes, especially in the short term. But they're really just managing a symptom. They're helping you sleep tonight. CBTI is totally different. It's about learning. The goal of CBTI is to teach your brain and body how to sleep naturally again by fixing the underlying habits and thoughts that got broken in the first place.
All right, so now that we know all of this, what can you actually do? What are some practical first steps you can take to start moving down the path to recovery?
A lot of these tips come straight from the CBTI playbook. A fixed wake-up time, even on weekends, that's huge for setting your body clock. If you're lying there awake for more than 20 minutes, get up. That helps break the association of your bed with frustration. Using the bed only for sleep and intimacy, same idea. You're retraining your brain. Each one of these is a small but really powerful step toward taking back control of your sleep.
And the last thing I really want you to take away is this. Overcoming chronic insomnia is not an overnight fix. It just isn't. It's a process. I mean, think about it. It took a while for these patterns to get wired into your brain, so it's going to take a little time to unwire them. But with the right strategies, with consistency, improvement is not just possible, it is absolutely achievable. You really can reclaim your sleep and get back to a place where going to bed is something you look forward to again.